G'day mates, welcome to the first of what could be a lot of very bad videos. A little bit late to the Rugby World Cup party, but there's still plenty to go and still lots to talk about. Be one of the best World Cups so far. Certainly it looks like it's one of the most even competitions that we've ever had, with any one of 4 or 5 teams that could win this thing. So let's talk about the final round of pool play, and certainly what we've got to look forward to with the quarterfinals coming up. Pool A, the first game of Pool A for the last and final round was New Zealand beating Uruguay by 73-0. I think New Zealand are still building their way into the competition, certainly played really well against Italy, but before that, struggled against South Africa before the World Cup, struggled against France, and they've definitely been inconsistent. And New Zealand made 9 changes from their game against Italy, so you'd expect a little bit of rust there. Uruguay were very spirited in that first 20 minutes and managed to keep New Zealand scoreless, although there was a couple of tries that were disallowed, rightfully so. But when you look at it, New Zealand scored 73 points in 60 minutes, so they'll be reasonably chuffed with that. And Uruguay played really well. They should really have had that first try if it wasn't just for a millimetre and a foot and touch. France was the next and final game for Pool A against Italy. France won 60-7, and France scored in the first 2 minutes, and the game was all over by then, pretty much. Italy just hasn't been able to really fire too much of a shot in this World Cup. You could argue they've underperformed in the tournament and haven't really given France or New Zealand the test that they probably would have hoped for going into the quarterfinals. So the last sort of proper hit out France and New Zealand had would have been right at the beginning of the tournament, and that really decided who went through in the pool. So France finished first, New Zealand finished second. In terms of Pool B, Ireland played against Scotland, which was supposed to be the game of the round. Really, after the first half, the game turned out to be a fizzer. Scotland unfortunately didn't fire too many shots in that first half, and Ireland were leading 26-0, and then when the teams came out in the second half, Scotland got a yellow card early. So the game was pretty much done at that point. And look, Ireland are the team to beat. Ireland and France, they looked really solid. Their defence was great. They just seem to have a knack of getting a turnover right when they really need it. Scotland was hot on attack on a number of occasions and good field position, and then Ireland managed to get a turnover. They seem to be the best at doing that at the moment. Tonga, Romania was the other game in Pool B. It's not really much to talk about there. Tonga will be disappointed with their tournament. I think they probably underperformed, and in other words, they could have played better, and they'll know that. But to be fair to them, they were in the toughest pool. Scotland didn't even go through, and they were ranked fifth. They were ranked 5th in the world coming into the World Cup. So the reality is, you've got a top 5 ranked team not making the top 8. Ireland topped the pool, South Africa second. South Africa didn't play in the final round, which means they've got a bit of a rest leading into the quarterfinals. Pool C, we had Wales against Georgia, Wales winning that one 43-19. An obvious result, but still an enjoyable game. I think any game with Georgia is always going to be interesting. They play with a lot of passion, a lot fun to watch, and their set piece is reasonably competitive. But Wales was always going to win that, and Wales scored some really good tries. I think that they've been building nicely into the tournament as well, and with Warren Gatland as coach, they seem to be getting better and better each week. I think they will make an interesting side of that draw. Fiji 23, Portugal 24. It was, you talk about Ireland and Scotland, this game was easily better. It was really it's probably the best game of the Rugby World Cup so far. And it wasn't like Fiji played badly. You can't take anything away from Portugal. They were absolutely outstanding. Their commitment, their passion, their defence, they just kept rocking Fiji back. And both teams play with a lot of passion. I mean, Fiji, rugby it means almost everything to them, so they were definitely playing for their people. They had 1 foot in the quarterfinal, but that could have gone horribly wrong if they really mucked it up. But certainly the game of the World Cup so far, and where that pool ended up, it ended up with Wales at the top. Fiji scraped through to the quarterfinals after 2 losses, which you could be reminded of the only other time a team's lost 2 games in pool play and still made the World Cup final, which was France in 2011. So, crazier things have happened before. Australia head home, basically the main surprise out of the quarterfinal results and what teams have made the quarterfinals. And I think Georgia's probably, if you had asked them, they'd be a little bit disappointed when they drew with Portugal a couple of weeks back, but Portugal had a great tournament. I'd written them completely off. I thought they were going to get pumped week on week out, and it was a joke that someone would end up with Portugal in our company sweepstake. Portugal drew with Georgia, and then they obviously beat Fiji at the end, so they will be absolutely stoked that they had a tournament like that, and they finished above Georgia in the pool. Pool D, the final pool, England played against Samoa. England won 18-17. Samoa was extremely close to winning that game, and you could argue, feel a bit disappointed. They had a good lead, and England just sort of worked their way back, managed to take control of that game and take the lead. But even at the end of the game, Samoa had a great attacking run, and with about a minute to go, unfortunately, they were hot on attack and knocked it on, but they still were in the game right to the very end. You could argue that was the best game for Samoa in a while. England will probably be a bit disappointed with how they performed, so they'll have to rectify a few areas coming into the quarterfinals. Japan lost to Argentina. The score was 27 to Japan, 39 to Argentina, and it was the third game of the round where there was a try scored in the first 2 minutes. So that's quite a interesting stat. There was one of the best tries you'll ever see a lock score. I think there might be a couple of other lock tries over the years that you could argue were a bit better, but definitely look at that. It was a hell of a try. The Japanese lock, chip and chase, got the perfect bounce, beat a tackle, and he scored towards the post. Definitely take a look at that. Unbelievable. Carrera for Argentina scored a hat-trick. He looked really sharp, and I would suggest that a lot of the Argentinian backs look pretty good. But I think if Argentina can sort of get everything lined up and get their set piece ticking along, they will be competitive. It's actually a very close game. Japan-Argentina, with about 10 minutes to go, there was only 2 points in it. England ended up topping the pool, and predictably Argentina was the other team to go through as well. So we have our quarterfinalists. Starting this weekend, we have the first quarterfinal, which is Wales versus Argentina. Very difficult to tip this one. I think that both teams have sort of struggled a little bit in the tournament. Wales, you'd argue, have performed better than what they did leading into the tournament. Argentina still have a big game in them. We know that they can beat the big teams these days. They've beaten the All Blacks in recent times, South Africa, and of course Australia this year, although Australia's not really offering a hell of a lot at the moment. So yeah, I think my prediction on that, I'm going to lean towards Argentina. I think if they can get everything right, they should win that one in a close one. Ireland versus New Zealand. Ireland are the team to beat, but my sort of thought process there, and of course I might be a little bit biased, not afraid to admit that, but my thought there is that with the All Blacks have the potential to beat anyone on their day. If the All Blacks play like they did earlier this year against South Africa at Mount Smart Stadium, or if they play as well as they did against France in the first half of that first game of this World Cup, or if they play as clinically and as with a fast-paced game as they did against Italy, I think that they can beat Ireland. Everything's sort of got to go their way though, because I think Ireland are the strongest side. They have a more physical game with probably a better kicking game with Johnny Sexton, and there's a few Kiwis in that Irish team just to sort of trouble their original home countrymen. So I think that game has got to be, I'm not going to say the pick of the round, but that one and the South Africa versus France game have got to be the two top quarterfinals. And then as we move into the other quarterfinal, we have England versus Fiji. I think that England will have the better set piece. Fiji might have the type of attack that could really trouble England's defence because it can be relatively unpredictable. And I would be leaning towards suggesting that Fiji, obviously just coming off one of the biggest upsets of the World Cup so far, granted, but they will look at how Samoa went against England and feel like they could have a chance. So as long as they sort of iron out a few of the challenges there, then I think that Fiji has the potential to trouble England in that game. France versus South Africa, I think that's the other blockbuster. You've got Ireland, New Zealand, France, South Africa. You've got the four top four teams in the world right now, and two of them are going home. So you can't get better than that in terms of a quarterfinal set up, but it does probably limit the excitement for what we have to look forward to in terms of semi-finals. France, I've heard that Dupont looks like he might be available. He's certainly available to train this week. So if he plays, that's a massive in for France, and I think enough to suggest that France should win the game. For South Africa, they've been mixing their team up, they've been trying combinations and trying different things, and you'd argue that they haven't really been as settled as most of the other teams. They've probably got the flexibility and the depth to be able to do that too, and of course when you lose a guy like Malcolm Marx, you do lose a hell of a lot. So I think that they're always going to be there or thereabouts. They're going to be in the game all the way through, and potentially it could go either way. Their forward pack, the style of rugby that South Africa play will keep them in. Knockout rugby is sort of what they do really, really well, and depending on what they do with fly half, if they can get their goal kicking right, then they'll be in the game right to the end. But I just think that France at home, you have to give that something. So that's the way I'd be leaning. Look, I might do another video later this week leading into the quarterfinals once we know what the teams are like, but certainly I've had a bit of fun putting this thing together. Thank you for watching if you have, and I look forward to having you back again.